Yo.
Woo! Oh, hey, I got to turn my light on.
Oh,
Hold
it's way
on.
better.
I got to
I
get my
feel like
beauty
that's
light.
worse.
Somehow it is worse.
Do you remember
No.
do you ever watch the show 30 Rock with Liz Lemon? Tina Fey
I,
plays. There's one where she's got her own show called Deal Breakers, and they're doing little promo spots for it. And she is normally the writer who's dealing with really wigged out actors and actresses that are like super in their heads and self conscious. And she becomes that because she's in front of the camera. the HD camera, and it just shows all the imperfections in her skin and face. And that's what you just reminded me of. You turn on the light and just, whoa, that's what I'm looking at.
is that what he looks like?
Could you put it in low def, please?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Very encouraging. Really
Mhm.
appreciate it.
You look great. I like the haircut.
Thanks. Yeah, I just got it today.
Big haircut.
Big haircut.
They have a Forrest Gump type of haircut situation going on there?
It's a Forrest Gump type situation. Yeah.
Nice.
I was in and out in 5 minutes.
Oof.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty sweet. And I even told her, I was like, just get it done. And she was like, oh, yeah, honey. It was excellent.
Mm.
Yeah. I had to do a graveside today, and I was looking all shaggy. I was like, no.
That's not going to work.
No, you're going to bury somebody. You got to look good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Out of
Do you do
respect for
full-
his family.
Do you do full on? Well, do you have a cemetery there on Post?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sand Hill Cemetery. So
Do you do
it's a lot of
full trumpet and everything, or no guns, right?
Yeah, no, we do guns. We do the whole thing, 21 gun salute. And man, the lady, she was a little bit older today. She almost had a heart attack. I thought we were going to have another funeral. I got to do a better job of warning them of like, it's that work. They're going to be loud guns.
Yeah,
Because she
guns.
almost jumped out of her chair. Yeah, she was terrified. But I sort of crushed it. So I think we're good to go. They were very pleased.
All in a day's work, man. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that made me feel very shallow to be self-conscious at a funeral about how I did with the homily while somebody's grieving the death of their loved one. Like, boy, human nature, I could make this about me, can't I?
Come over to the spouse afterwards. God bless you. I'm sorry for your loss. How did I do? What do you think?
That's what you aren't saying that out loud, but you are you're reading that in her face.
Did I console you? Okay.
Yeah, I do a good job.
Tell me.
That makes sense of Lewis's thing, and I think the weight of glory, how it doesn't sound like much, but Jesus guarantees us in heaven, or promises us this, well done, good and faithful servant, now unto your master's joy. Except that when you really get that from someone whose opinion matters to you, there is no greater joy than, well done, good and faithful servant. This validation of our being. You've done what you've been made to do. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So
but we're looking for it in all the wrong places.
Maybe you are. I'm not. By the way, tell me how good I'm doing on the podcast.
I think this podcast is going pretty well.
Tell me I'm good. Rob, do you have something? Because I do. I wanted to share a cool experience that I had.
Fire away, man.
The other day. But it looks like you have something kind of cooking there. And you always got the good stuff.
Yeah, you do have good stuff.
No, man. Thank you. Tell me more about that. Yeah.
Hey, you're great, man. You're great. Huh?
What's your cool experience, Matt?
All right. So I had spiritual direction yesterday with Father Walter, and he's awesome. I know I talk about him quite a bit on the podcast, but he's just been such a blessing for me. And one, I just kind of wanted to rejoice in how awesome spiritual direction is, because it was very simple. It wasn't dramatic or anything like that, but doing army stuff, it's like an immersion into another language. You're in another culture. You got to pick up the jargon. You got to live according to like a certain lifestyle. And when you do that, I mean, Connor, it's probably your same experience when you did all your language studies. The full immersion, it starts to shape the way that your brain functions and like you're thinking differently. That's a part of like learning the language, being immersed in the culture and all that different stuff. And that's happening to me I can feel that happening. And so like all the ways that I'm processing information and data and my day to
Even just
day.
saying something like 30 September.
You did say that.
Yeah,
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
30
off air, but
September?
yeah. You kept saying that. And I'm like, that's not how people talk.
That's not how people talk. What do they say?
September 30th.
September 30th.
September 30th? 30
Mhm.
September?
Do you say
Man.
Friday, or do you have a different word for the days as well?
Yeah, we still say Friday.
Day Fry.
Yeah. Yeah. See, like stuff like that. I don't even realize it.
Mhm.
And the more and more you get immersed into it, what also comes along with it is there's a value structure that's in place in all these cultures that you start to focus on the things that the highest people in the culture are also focusing on, because they say, hey, I'm the king of this culture and I'm telling you what's good, what success, what victory looks like. And so everybody else looks where they're looking. And so then you're like, oh, this is what it means to be good. This is what it means to be successful, and all those different things that come along with it. And like, man, I could feel that happening in my brain. And as I was talking to Father Welter, and I'm kind of describing like, man, I'm a little bit worried about these things, and I'm a little bit anxious about these things, and I've really been thinking a lot about this. He just did this really simple thing, and he was like, well, what do you think Jesus like feels about that? Or like, what do you think Jesus thinks about you missing, a deadline on like a work project that you're going to be assessed by? And super simple question, but it was just like really clear that like
He's really mad.
yeah,
Is that it?
I'm going to be punished.
I sent you there, and this is how you respond.
And it was maybe the most identifiable moment that I had a metanoia experience. And again, not in like a dramatic way or whatever, but like got outside of my mind, the meta beyond noia, your mind, where I was like, oh my gosh, I had conceived of this situation so totally within this new like framework of thinking. And it was just like Jesus went, here, let me help you, and just like picked me up and moved me outside of that. And then it was again very simple, not dramatic. But I was like, man, I could totally fail, and like the Lord would still so love me. And there was just like this immediate freedom and levity, and you're like, oh, this is real.
Right.
I was operating in fake army land, but like that's not where I want to live. I want to live with the Lord. And so a part of it was like just spiritual direction is awesome. But then the second one was like, man, it was a really cool experience to be like saved from something that was less than the mind of Jesus and like brought into that space. It was really cool. It was really fun.
I've been thinking about trying to live from my heart more, which isn't, I think, what the experience you're describing. The way I experience similar things is that I'm after some good, which your heart is the wanting muscle. So you're driving after whatever it is that deadline thing represents to you, approval or avoidance of failure, or whatever the case may be. Peace, stability, equilibrium, order, like how you want your life to be, or how you want to be as a person vis-a-vis other people, and so when I'm not living out of my heart and just like the experience of, okay, whatever I'm feeling right now and whatever I'm wanting, I'm in relationship. I'm like in myself, looking out at others, at reality. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's really beautiful, but I'm always just myself in it, responding to it as it is right now. Or I like step out of myself. My head is this reasoning thing, but yet I can like have these ecstatic like movements in my head of like comparing myself to other people. So I'm outside myself, looking at myself and like, how do I stack up next to that person? Or boy, if I fail, like in the future, what's that going to mean? Or that thing in the past is like unfixable or irresolvable, and it represents what the future is guaranteeing me in terms of suffering or whatever. It could be the opposite. I could be looking forward to some pleasure, like, oh man, in 2 weeks I'm going to be doing great, and I right now it sucks, but it's, and it's just all this stuff pulling you out of yourself and pulling you out of the moment. It's like, I feel like that's what pride is in a way, like true humility. Tim Monastis, my associate, had this great homily on, was it the gospel last week, about take the lowest place. They said humility is telling the truth about yourself. And it's not living in the narrative of yourself, the accusative narrative of like all the worst things about yourself. Like when he used the example of doing this wedding mass, and he tried to do the Our Father and the embolism and stuff in Polish, and he had tried really hard at the accent and stuff and was pretty proud of it. And then after the mass, this guy comes up to him and is like, Father, great homily. I love the wedding. It was such a beautiful ceremony, but your Polish is kind of rough. I don't know if you should do that again, or something like that. And he just said that was what stuck with him of everything of that day for a long time. It was just like this one thing he did wrong, or embarrassment, humiliation. But humility is the truth is like, it doesn't surprise me that I'm not perfect or that I'm not good at everything, but I have these gifts and I'm glad to be myself. Did I tell you the story of, I think it was Donovan, this little kid in our preschool who, at preschool graduation, when I was in the parish, I went to the preschool graduation, and the kids all had to say like 3 things they liked about preschool. And his 3 things were like, I like drawing, I like dinosaurs, and I like myself. And he was like a very likable kid. So it just struck me as like one of the most truly humble, innocent things a kid could say, is that he just liked being himself, and that's where I want to be, is like living out of my heart, so that what you're describing, that levity and ease, and it's not that you're dismissing the needs and requirements of the army. It's just that like, okay, who am I living for, and what am I living for, and who am I really? It's all this identity stuff, and for that to be stable, it needs to be rooted in a relationship. And then your mission flows out of that.
Yeah, it was like I've heard a description of betrayal is that betrayal is when you look up and you realize that reality is not as you thought it was, which meant that you don't know where you've been, and you don't know where you are, and you don't know where you're going, because you thought the world was one way, but then it turns out there was actually this like kind of dark underbelly, that people betrayed you, and they are not, you're not in relationship with people the way that you thought you were. And so you're like, man, I thought life was like this good, but it turns out there was all this undercurrent of stuff that was going on, that it flipped me upside down. And now I have no stability in my life, because what I thought was real is actually not real. What I experienced was the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh man, kind of living in like an untruth. And then it was like, oh, wait a second. Let's get beyond that so we can actually live in the freedom of what Jesus Christ has to offer. And you're like, oh, this is real. And it was immediate. I guess like that freedom and kind of room to breathe, and you just get to laugh at those things. And it's like a little moment of salvation there that becomes incarnate. And you're like, hey, that's pretty cool, man.
It also makes me think of like, what about when it all is truly revealed, either at death or after death, at the second coming, when like all the apocalypsis, that unveiling happens and we see the truth naked. Like, wow, if these little epiphanies or metanoias have that much of a relief about, oh, that's the truth of who I am and the way things actually are, it's going to be pretty dope.
It'll be great. I think it'll be funny.
Yeah.
In like the best way. That's what's so good about it. It's interesting. It's very, what both of you said is very similar to a point. Again, it's another C.S. Lewis point from Screw Tape. But I read one recently that the demons are talking to each other, and the patient that they're working on for hell is actually growing in humility, which is extraordinarily concerning for the demons. And so their only play left is to try to make him prideful about being humble, which is possible. This is what I preached on last weekend, actually, is that like human beings have the capacity to be so prideful that you're actually prideful about your own humility.
Yeah.
And so the demons, they say in the book, in their strategy, you can do that. And what they're doing is just numbing the person to reality and eventually trying to win the soul for hell. But the one thing that they have to guard against is that the person's sense of humor is not cultivated. Because as soon as the sense of humor arises, then the game is up, because they realize how ridiculous it is to be humble
To be
about
proud of being
to be prideful
humble.
of being humble. And it's funny. And it shows it in its light. Yeah. So it's a very like, it's a point that's very in front of you, and you say like, oh, that's so obvious, but you probably never thought about it before.
Yeah.
Which that's why I found it so insightful. But
Mm-hmm.
no, it's good, man. I've been praying a lot with images. It's been big like the last couple months, and I talked about it in spiritual direction of just prayer being less didactic and more like iconic in a lot of ways, and the fruits that can bear. But certainly, even when you guys were talking and sharing there, it just brought about kind of like what you said. Like you said, that's a little, it's a glimpse or an experience of salvation in that moment that's incarnate. It's like, yeah, you actually have. I think those are very present. I think, and the weird thing about the human experience is that you can reflect on and be aware of it in yourself, and then you can see it in other people too. So I was thinking just a couple I was thinking, we kind of been reflecting back on my summer and how good it was, and just a couple images that have really been, very iconic for me to pray with, and getting to see another human being in a moment, like just a glimpse, but they're not self-conscious in the moment. They're just them. And it's very cool. It's a very cool place to be.
Yeah.
Tolkien, I don't know if he created a word, which is very, very
It's a Tolkien move.
Yeah, it's a very Tolkien move. But he called those moments, like those moments of grace when you can really see it. And yeah, salvation takes on flesh in people's lives and these specific moments. He called them eucatastrophes. So like it's the opposite of a catastrophe. Like everything falls apart. Where it's like there's just some explosion of grace that illuminates reality. And he has a couple of like pivotal moments within the trilogy where he would point to and be like, that's a eucatastrophe that kind of happened in the story. But I love that term. It's like, dude, here's a concrete victory for Jesus right here in somebody's life. And
against all odds.
It's the opposite of a catastrophe. It's an anti-betrayal. This is like an invitation into reality.
This is the Lewis trifecta, because we said way to glory, screw tape. Do you remember the silver chair?
Isn't
that the same, pretty similar concept? Is that at night he's tied to the silver chair by the witch, because that's the hour of sanity he has all day, when he remembers that is he the prince or something?
Oh man, dude, good point. You're right.
I don't remember that part. Walk through it a little bit, because I don't remember him sitting in the chair.
Yeah, the children somehow find themselves in this like underworld.
They go under, yeah. And there's I remember because they're digging tunnels to attack his own kingdom.
Yeah,
He is digging tunnels to
right.
attack his own kingdom. Yeah.
So he's the king,
right?
And the witches bewitched him into thinking that all of that stuff up there is an illusion, even to the point where like there's no such thing as the sun. That's just, you're just extrapolating from these light bulbs that we have down here, that there's some kind of like bright light bulb in the sky.
Right.
It's just, the reality is this dark, dim, low thing, and there's no big world beyond this world. And you're much better off. I can't remember all of the deceit or the deception that she. But yeah, the idea is that like they're down there tunneling to overthrow his own kingdom. So he's become his own enemy, except 1 hour a night, which is when she tells him like, oh, we always have to tie you to this chair because you go berserk, because you're like crazy. But it's only this 1 hour, and that's this hour that he gets this grace of remembering the truth. And if he's able to like be free and move in those moments, he would just go back up, and it would just be in a moment he could be free and back king of his kingdom again. So somehow the children, spoiler alert, she dies. The children help him. But that's a many years ago I read that summary. But what you're talking about, that feeling, the anti-betrayal, the eucatastrophe, that's somehow like that hour of clarity of remembering who you are. And actually amnesia, what you're talking about with betrayal and that like this earthquake of like what's real, what can be relied on. Amnesia is the same way. Like you forget, and the whole idea of anamnesis in the mass and liturgy is like the anti-forgetting. Drill this into your children. Speak of him at home and abroad, whether you're busy or at rest. Like, do not forget who you are in God and what He has done for you. So amnesia is like, I forget who I am. I forget my own name, and I forget what's real and where I came from and what happened and how I got here, and also who I can trust. So anamnesis is like just, and with grace, it's infused in a certain sense. Like Father Brian helped you reason to this in a certain way. It was like through your mind, but it got to your heart by way of just like the plain truth of it. Like, what does Jesus actually think about your TPS reports? He does not care.
Totally. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And that's I've heard a buddy talk about, but the whole story of the Old Testament is spiritual dementia, spiritual, like this constant forgetfulness.
That's how. Yeah, I think it's early in his pontificate, but Francis defines sin as forgetting.
Yeah,
I remember Mark Duran he would talk about that in Morals. He told us that. I could have that totally wrong. It's been a long time ago, but a good definition for sin is forgetting.
And it usually, I mean, there's a couple of like pretty hilarious. It's horror. I'm sure it was horrible at the time, but like how quickly the people of Israel forget this, the spiritual amnesia sets in, and then they move on to other gods and make golden calves after like a day of Moses being away. And dude, some of those, it's so funny. And even the Psalm talks about it, is like, when you forget who you are, you went from worshiping the true God of Israel, the God of heaven and earth, the creator of heaven and earth, to worshiping a dumb, inanimate object that eats grass. And you're like, that's always felt to me like a good image of sin. Like, when I forget who I am, you're like worshiping God in the glory of heaven to like mindlessly eating. You're like, you just become so less than what you were made for when you forget who you are in God.
Yeah.
And like the people of Israel go from being His chosen people, they're still His chosen people, but they forget it. And all of a sudden, they're worshiping a cow. Like, missing the mark a little bit there, guys. And you're like, missing the mark a little bit there, Mike. That whole back and forth is so funny. Moses comes down and he's like, Aaron, what happened? And Aaron's like,
yeah,
dude, he literally goes, he's like,
it took
look,
a while.
Yeah, you were away, and the people asked me. They asked me to
just to
gather
get
up all
the
the
story
gold.
start. Yeah.
Just they gathered up the gold, And then I threw it in there, and then all of a sudden, boom, you know what popped out? This calf. I don't know.
Right.
He literally said I just like put it in, and then what popped out was a calf. So I don't know. And then we just kind of lost it
Do you
from
remember
there.
the story of Father de Gaulle with the coffee creamer? Did I ever tell you this? What you just said about Aaron's reaction to Moses reminds me of a couple buddies. I think it was Jamie and Scott were driving Father de Gaulle early in the morning to the airport when they were in the seminary. And so they were being good little seminarians, and they got him a coffee and like, oh, Father de Gaulle, we got you a hot coffee. Do you want cream? And they got him in the passenger seat. And by the time Jamie walked around to the driver's side and he opens the door, sits down in the driver's seat, Father de Gaulle just turns to him. He goes, something seems to have happened. And what had happened was that he opened the creamer kind of violently, and it just sprayed dairy all over into the speaker and the door and all. It's like a big mess with this tiny little creamer. And the passive voice there was just so funny. Something seems to have happened. That's Aaron when Moses comes down. Yeah, I don't know, dude. It just a bunch of stuff happened that was kind of weird.
Crazy
one thing
story.
led to another, and like then now here we are.
Yeah.
Oh, Greg over there just took off his tunic, and everyone was like, "Hey, what's going on over there?"
Remember in Hot Rod when the montage turns into a riot and the dude's got a TV?
Yeah.
He's like, man, that was so weird.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, it was such a positive vibe, and people just took advantage of it.
He had looted. Yeah. Oh man.
Good stuff, guys.
Yep.
I know you got an out. You got to get going.
These are out.
Yeah, I do got to get going.
You have other friends besides us. That's cool. I have other friends too.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean, not tonight because I was gonna hang out with you guys and everything, but yeah, so
cool.
many other friends.
Cool.
Tons of friends. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Got loads of them.
Tons. Who's crying? I'm not.
I was making a lasagna, cutting onions. What's that? What's your apartment like, Mike? You got it all fixed up, and it looks much more homey than it did.
Yeah. No, it does. It feels much more homey. Hey, let me show you. I sent pictures of this to Rob. I don't know how this is going to look on the computer, but I'm working on it. This is like a little homey project that I do in my spare time. All right, Rob, you already know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Whoa!
Look at this, dude.
You did that?
I'm redesigning, doing a model of the Mundelein Chapel.
What?
You see the front there? Isn't that insane?
I can't tell if you're trolling me, dude. What is that? Is it made of toothpicks?
Yeah, well, it's not toothpicks. It's like actual model wood pieces. Look, this is the side. How insane is that?
Is that for real? The Mundelein Chapel?
This is dude. I sketched it out to the exact dimensions, then put the ratios of like how it all needs to fit together.
You're like an idiot savant. How are you able to do that?
What do you mean, dude? It's just math. And that chapel is so perfectly constructed on its ratios that once you figure out what the actual I don't know what the answer is, it's the key to everything.
Right.
If you can figure out exactly how everything proportions
that's an
together
isosceles triangle.
It's perfect. It's
Wow.
perfect.
Can I see the front? Can I see the front again?
Yeah, dude, I had so much fun doing this. I put on an audiobook and then
wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's very cool. So yeah, those are the little niches where the statues are.
That's where the statues would be. And I have these columns created.
Mary over the front door.
Yep. Look at the detail over the front door there. You see that?
Yeah.
Dude, it's so fun. I'm having a blast with it. So I put on an audiobook.
I do. I say this in meaning because it is really cool. There's like a little part of me. It reminds me of the scene from Parks and Rec when Ben is in like a really bad place and he gets into claymation.
That's right.
This is true. Requiem for a Dream. No, I think you're really gonna like this, dude.
He's been in his room for like 6 days and he has 4 seconds of video.
He's like, that can't be it. That can't be it.
Yeah, I feel like that project indicates that you're either doing really well, that you have all this creative energy, or that you're just not doing well at all.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. Well said.
I guess we'll have to see, guys. We'll see how this plays out. If you see me on the news in a couple of weeks, I think we'll know.
It's just a disturbing amount of toothpick models in his house. Like, whoa. Did he sleep or?
That is a striking resemblance to certain people's faces.
I mean, he's talented, but he's crazy. There's no doubt about that.
All right, gents. Well, have a good evening.
All right, bro,
See you next
dudes.
time.
Zip.
Peace out.